So today's speaker is Daniel Ware, and he's a genealogy librarian with the Kentucky Historical Society, and he has a passion for genealogy, history, and learning. So he earned his Bachelor of Arts Degree in art history from Georgetown College in 2010 with a minor in history, and he then earned his master's in library and information science from the University of Kentucky in 2017, and has been a KHS staff member since 2022. So I will go ahead and hand it over to him.
All right, and so yes, today, like it was already said, my name is Daniel Ware. I'm the genealogy librarian at the Kentucky Historical Society, and I was just going to talk about some of the different genealogy resources that we have here. Okay, and this is just kind of a quick introduction, just to kind of generally kind of the stuff I'm going to kind of try to go over as quickly. So the library that I actually work in at the Kentucky Historical Society is called the Martin F. Schmidt Research Library. Some of the other things I'm going to talk about will be the reference collection we have, library computers, maps and atlases. We've got different files in groupings of filing cabinets, such as surname files and county files, and then Kentucky subject files. We've also have family histories and books. We've got just general library books. We've also got out-of-state books. So if you've got ancestors that were born in, say, Virginia, and then they may have migrated to Kentucky, we might have something. Or if they were born in Kentucky and they migrated out west, there may be something in that section that you might be able to find. We've also got specifically county related books and documents and materials. And we've also got periodicals and in microfilm and archival materials. And then we've also got some different, I'm going to talk about some of the more, I guess, popular, the record types that people usually look at when they come to KHS, and the ones that I use more often as far as my research goes. And so, yes, so the Martin F. Schmidt Research Library, it's where you come to do your genealogy research here at the Kentucky Historical Society. We do hold works pertaining to all 120 counties of Kentucky. We've got things such as general books, like general history books, books about, art, books about, architecture, about religion, some of the stuff you might find just in, libraries in general. Along with periodicals, we do have like national level periodicals, such as ones that relate to the Daughters of the American Revolution. And we've also got periodicals that are specific to states, and we do have those in their own special like state section as far as the periodicals go. So there's also this library is where you can get help with researching. If you're just looking for a Kentucky ancestor, if you are writing a book or a paper, we have a group of people, we call them fellows, and they're usually writing or putting together a special project or a book, and they're usually focusing on a very specific subject or a moment in Kentucky history. And so they'll usually come here to look through our collection to help them with that. And we do have just a reference collection kind of fairly early on when you walk in, and it's going to hold more like the reference books, such as like Kentucky encyclopedias. We do have the 1790 up through the 1850, just the index to the U.S. Censuses for the whole state of Kentucky. So I'll use those a lot when I'm looking for people to see if I can find them in a particular county during a particular decade. There's also some of the early Kentucky landowner books and books relating to like Virginia, like land surveys, and kind of that period in between when, Kentucky got became its own state and left Virginia. And then here's a picture of like, if you walked in, that's what basically that reference section would look like. And we've also just have our computers, which you can get into our library catalog. You can look at our digital collections, which that would be anything potentially that our digital archivist has digitized. You could actually either on our computers or even from home through our website at history.ky.gov. You can actually look at certain items that are in our collection that have been digitized. There's also objects catalog, and that's basically if you want to see if we've got a particular item that may have been donated to us, like, we have certain military uniforms, or we might have anything from particular tools to fish hooks to, certain, physical objects. And back to the library catalog, though, you can also look at that from home as well. Now that you won't necessarily be able to look at a particular item, but that will at least tell you what we have in our library collection. So if you wanted to see if we had a particular record for a particular county, or if we had a certain family history book before you made the trip, you could check to make sure you're not wasting a trip and just kind of see what's in our collection. And also, like a lot of institutions and libraries, we do have the free library edition of Ancestry. So you can access that as long as you're like on our site and connected to our Wi-Fi or using our computers. We also have Family Search, which that's free, and you can basically access that anywhere. We also have Fold 3. So if you have ancestors that were in the military, you might want to look into that while you're here on one of our computers to see if you can find any particular military records for them. And then here's another just general pictures to show you kind of how we have our computers set up in our library. Okay, and we do have maps and atlases. We have different maps of different Kentucky counties, and these can help show you some of the boundaries and how they may have changed over the years. And especially because, knowing where a family member may have lived during a certain time may help you determine what county they may have been in at that time, just because of all the different, how the counties changed over the years. And, they may have still physically been in the exact same spot that, the whole time, but because of the boundary changes, they may appear on paper to have changed counties or to moved completely. And you can also find things such as, I know we have, I think it's a Henry County and Shelby County atlas, and it will show some of the maps in there. I think it's from 1882. It'll show like the homesteads of ancestors. So you could potentially see, my great uncle so-and-so had land or had a home in this particular spot. And I think there's also a page that has like a chart of that, and it'll break down like what their occupation was, and I think maybe how long they had lived in that particular place. So, certain maps and atlases can kind of show you some very important information as far as migration and how things changed over time. And then here's just an example of Scott County, one of the maps, because we do have like more of like originals in our archives, and then we've got more like the copies and things like that people can access just in our OpenStax area. And the picture on the right is the fixture that we have, the cabinet that we have the maps in. And there's different drawers, and we have like a little binder that has like an index for, which drawer, you might find a particular map in. So, you can definitely look at that and see if there's any map that would help you. Okay, and Surname Files, I use these quite a bit, and usually when people come into our library, we definitely suggest that people look at the surname files, especially if they're trying to, find, information about their, family, and they don't really know where to start. A lot of these are just donated materials over the years that we've received, or correspondences between our institution and other individuals. And sometimes it might be, might be newspaper articles, it might be, copies of pages from family histories, or, some sort of article. And, they can hold things such as, birth dates and marriage dates. It can be a family history and tell you where a particular family member may have moved to. It could be certain, censuses and things like that. Now, there are different materials in each folder, so it's kind of hit or miss depending on, what folder you pick. And in some families, we've got like, 20 plus folders for like that particular surname, and some we may have like one. We also, depending on the individual, sometimes we do have surname files on a specific person, especially if they were, if they had some kind of historical relevance, or they were like a political person, or something like that. And sometimes, the surnames might have been spelled differently over the years, and depending on where you were at. Typically, I have noticed, we may have one or two of the different surname files that may be of the same family, but they may be spelled differently. And then sometimes even inside, we'll have documents that spell the surname like multiple ways. So, if there's multiple versions of that particular surname, folder wise, it doesn't hurt to check all of them, just to make sure. And then this is basically about when you walk into our open stacks. On the left, you'll see a lot of the filing cabinet, and here's a close-up of kind of generally what you might see when you're looking at a particular drawer. Okay, and then we do have our counties of Kentucky section. Those are going to include, mainly in this area, will be more books, but we're gonna have something on all 120 counties of Kentucky. However, unfortunately, not all the counties are created equal as far as what we have, unfortunately, because a lot of it is things that we've collected or been given over the years. And, some counties, a lot of their records might have been destroyed through, courthouse fires, or, other problems. And, so we may have not been able to collect as much as well. And a lot of stuff in this area are going to be like, we're going to have like physical book versions of certain records, like birth records and, deeds, marriage records, things like that. And, or we may just have indexes. So I do actually look in this section a lot as far as, trying to find, a record or at least an index. And then I can maybe, if I find them on an index, I can go and look on microfilm for that particular record. We also have different histories for the counties, like, of a particular town or the county as a whole. And that might give useful information on particular families that may have lived in that county. So this is a very useful section. And then this is just kind of down one of the aisles as far as the county section that we've got. And a lot of them are like more self-bound. And we do have like some different like newsletters in this area. If you can look, and there's like the bigger looking, like the blue and the black and the green holders there. So some of the counties, we have like certain newsletters from those particular counties that could, somebody might find useful as well. And then, yeah, like I mentioned previously, we do have family histories and books. Those are pretty useful as well, because I go and look here, especially if I'm trying to follow a particular family. A lot of these are donated from, individuals who have written about these families, and they're very useful if you don't know where to start. And, you can at least, you might be able to see, there might be a narrative about that particular branch of the family, and it might tell you where they came from, or it may tell you where they went. It'll tell you, some of them will tell you who they married and, who their children were. I have been using these as well to at least get particular names or places and dates, and then I can take that information and try to actually find actual documentation in our county area or our microfilm area. And so, it's good to team these up with the surname files. And yeah, they do have a lot of background information, and they can just kind of help you see where they came from, their line of descendants, and where they may have migrated. And then here's that picture, just kind of a close up. It's basically like right to the left of the surname files. And then there's the out of state books. So yeah, if you had an ancestor that may have moved to Kentucky from another state, or if they were born in Kentucky and moved away, those can be very useful. I do come and look here as well, especially if it's, an earlier family that may have moved to Kentucky, early in its statehood, and they were, from Virginia originally, or Maryland, or, somewhere, I'll try to look there to see if I can find, a person's birth, or, see if I can find any kind of form of migration. And like the counties of Kentucky section, a lot of these out of state sections, we've got them grouped by state, but then when you look further into the actual, like, we break it down further into, we try to then break it down by county within that state. So some counties in these out of state books we don't have quite as much of, unfortunately. And then we do also have just the more general, like, marriages of Virginia. It may not be specific to like a county, but it'll be to the state. We do have those kind of items as well. And like I was saying earlier, if you had an ancestor that was born in Kentucky and then they migrated to Missouri, or somewhere, you can potentially try to find, if you know what county in Missouri they went to, or, you may be able to look out and see that there's, just something in the Missouri section that might tell you, you might find your ancestor in a census, or or a particular book. And then here's just a couple examples. Like, here's some Michigan pioneer and historical collections, and then books on Nebraska. So it's kind of things like that. A lot of the times, might be like history of York County, Nebraska, but then we might just have like just specifically Nebraska related, not specifying on a county. Oops, I've repeated that. Whoopsie. Okay, and so another big thing that I use a lot is the microfilm. We do have copies of most records on microfilm. So what I will typically do is I'll go and look in the physical books for a particular record or an index. And then if I can find that, then, I'll try to look in the microfilm then as well. Some different records that we do have on microfilm will be like the censuses. We do have some newspapers, but depending on the time and the county, that could be hit or miss, because we have a lot more earlier stuff. So if you start getting into like the 1900s and later, it gets a little sparser. We do have quite a few tax lists for different counties. So if you're wanting to look at tax lists for a particular county for your ancestor, you could check those as well. And we do have physical book copies in the county section as well for some of those. We do have the 1852 to 1911 vital records, which I'll kind of talk a little bit about some of them in just a moment. But those, the way they're usually broken down on microfilm will be, usually it'll be like 3 or 4 counties per microfilm roll. But then like it'll be county first. So it may be like Barron County, and then under Barron County, it'll be broken down between birth and then marriage and then death records. And so then you'll do, Barron County, all the birth records, then all the marriage records, then all the death records, and then you'll jump to the next county and so on and so forth. And There's also city directories. We do have some of them, and depending on the county, we do have like physical book forms of some of the city counties or directories as well. So, if you know where your ancestor lived, you might be able to find out a little more about like their business or, the address of where they lived at a specific time. And then here's just kind of a general pictures of on the left, that's where we have them stored. And then up close in the second picture is an example of a microfilm roll. And then on the right side is one of the microfilm readers that we have on one of our computers, and then the reader and beside it that you put the film on. And then there's also like we have archival materials such as in manuscripts and letters, and we've got, like I previously mentioned, maps and atlases, photographs, pamphlets, rare books, business records, postcards, and then many other things that I honestly can't think of at this moment. But a lot of those are going to be what you would have to do unless it's unless it's been digitized. You would have to physically come here to look at these, and then you would have to fill out we have like a little call slip like form that you would have to fill out with what you're wanting, and then one of our staff members would go and get that for you. Okay, and then some of the specific types of records that we do have people look at and that I use a lot. These are probably the 4 that I use the most, and that most people that I've worked with have come in and looked at would be the birth records, marriage records, death records, and then probate records, specifically usually wills, but yeah, those are the main ones. And in birth records, as far as in Kentucky, there was a period between 1852 and about 1910 where the counties would from what I've learned over the years, I think it was kind of like a stop and go kind of process where they would, for a certain amount of time, they would try to record these records, and then and then they didn't for a while. And then we had things like the Civil War where people weren't really recording these records at that time. And from what I've learned from other people, I think also the people that took the records like didn't necessarily get compensated very well. So I don't think, from what I've understood, they didn't necessarily try that hard in certain circumstances. So that's why, like, especially birth and death records, it can be very hit or miss between this time period. And then if you are looking for anything that's 1911 or later, you're going to want to go to the Office of Vital Statistics in Frankfurt. And then here's like an example of just kind of a listing from Adair County of birth records right here. And marriage records, it can kind of be the same way, except at least I feel like when I've searched, I'll find more marriage records, especially even before 1852, of some sorts, like, marriage bonds, which I believe, from what I've understood, that was basically where either like the husband or one of the male members of the party involved would put up some kind of compensation or money or something to basically ensure that this wedding was going to happen. And then we've also got registers, which, just list and show like who, the married couple, that was registering for the marriage. And then, certificates and things like that. So there's a higher chance to find a marriage record before 1852 than the others, just because they didn't really do that quite as often from what I've been able to find. And then here's an example of a marriage record right here. And in death records, it's pretty much the same as the birth records. It's hit or miss. if it's 1911 or later, you'll probably want to go to the Office of Vital Statistics. Now, I have seen through when I've researched and looked around in our collection, we actually do have from 1911 to about 1965, we do have some birth certificates on microfilm. Now, the only thing is you would need to know the certificate number, because the way they're labeled, it would be like 1916, death, it'd be like certificate 1 through 3000, or, something like that. So you would kind of need to know the number and then like the year, and then you could, and county, I believe, and you can kind of pinpoint it a little bit easier. And here's an example of a death record. And one thing with some of these is you can glean, specific information like on how some of them may have died. Like, the first couple died from a fever, and you can also potentially figure out, if they were the son or daughter of a particular person and things like that. So that can you can find information that way as well. And then there's the probate records, which chiefly, like, I'll look through a lot of wills, because, people are always wanting to try to find parents or siblings or children of their ancestor. And, typically the wills, if you can find a good one, it'll actually list out, everybody and everything, and that doesn't always happen, unfortunately, but, that's always a good place to look if you're trying to find family connections. You can also find inventories, so you might get an idea of, what your ancestor had in their possession at the time of their death. There's also guardianship records, especially if there was any younger children that were involved with, when the parents died. However, from what I've heard and understood, though, there were a lot of times where even if the mother was still alive and well, they would still put the children through like the guardianship and everything. And so, so sometimes even if the mother was still alive, they may have still done it regardless. But yeah, you can look at these to try to find, maybe a potential parent or a sibling or a child of some sort. And here's an example of some wills here. And so, like you said, sometimes, you can see like George D. Brown, he died on April 7th, 1847. He left his estate to his wife, Nancy Brown. And now, unfortunately, the, children, no name. But, you can also see executors and witnesses, and those could potentially be family members as well. So, you might learn of a new family member to help you with your research by looking to those names as well. And then let's see, and then generally this is just kind of like just some of our like library hours and policies, just in case, anybody was interested in coming in. So the hours for the Martin F. Schmidt Research Library are Wednesdays through Saturdays, 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. The admission would be $8, and that would basically get you into just KHS as a whole. So that would give you access to the museum, to the old state capitol, where you can take a tour of our Kentucky Military History Museum, which is just up the hill from us. It'll get you in there, and it'll get you up into the library as well. And then you can sign in at the reference desk. And if it's the first time, we do have like a little registration paper that you'd have to sign, and basically then you'd get a library card, and then that would give you access to our open stacks and the computers, and let you look around at things. And some general things that you can bring would be like paper, research notes, certain electronic devices, and 3-ring binders, pencils, ideally, just because, they're easier to, as far as, if you make a mark, you can erase it and things like that. Cell phones you are allowed to have, however, they would need to be on vibrate or lowest volume. And if you did need to take a call, we would just ask if you would, step outside of the main library. And then like handheld cameras and things, devices with camera capabilities are allowed along with the cell phone. If you want to take pictures, we would just have no flash. So that would be the only thing. And things you really shouldn't be bringing in, ideally like purses, briefcases, any kind of like large bag. Ideally, because we do have lockers that we would let you put stuff in if you needed to. If it's other manuscripts or, other books or things like that, ideally not, but we do have some exceptions to certain things like that, and they can just be discussed with the staff. Ink pens, permanent markers, anything like that, just because they can make marks and, make a mess potentially. And then like tobacco products and food and drink, just because we don't want spills and, anything to get stained or anything like that. Let's see, and then research requests. This is one of the main things that I end up doing. And basically this would be if you're not able to come here in person. We do have like basically 3 different types of requests that you can potentially seek. One is a single record request, and that would be when you're needing just one particular record for one ancestor. So if you're needing the birth record of your great uncle Jim, that would be a single record request. Now, unfortunately, typically each request is for one ancestor only. So if there's, multiple family members you're looking for, like they would each need their own particular form. Now, the only exception would be if the 2 ancestors were the 2 that got married and you're looking for their marriage record, because, that's, one thing. Now, a research request would be if you are either looking for more than one record for your one ancestor, like if you're wanting basically enough documentation to basically sketch out your great uncle Jim's like whole life, you're wanting like to know all sorts of things about him and learn, get that all figured out. That would be a research request. Or if it's something that's going to be very time consuming, then that would probably be a research request. Like if you're, and there's also photocopy requests. Those would be like if you're needing just specific pages copied from a cited source. Like if we have a family history book and you wanted 5 pages from that book on this particular branch of the family, you can specify that and send us in a photocopy request for that. Now, I have on occasion, because obviously people aren't going to always know what is specifically in like a particular book that they're needing. Like they may see it in our catalog, but they don't know if that particular branch of their family is in that book. So I have gone and looked and, counted up pages and looked and kind of got numbers and figures for somebody, and then like messaged them, emailed them and kind of updated them on what they would need to fulfill that request. Now we have some of our prices have changed or are about to change because we are getting ready to start a new point of sale like database system. And so single record request, that's going to be $20. Research requests is still $50, but the members, they'll get 10% off. And as far as I've been told, members, basically anything that they would have to pay for, like site-wide, would be 10% off. So if they went into the to the gift shop or or something like that, or they would get 10% off. And photocopy requests would be 50 cents per page. And then there's also, for the photocopy requests, there is processing fees that are involved for just the time and the work to get that together. So the first 25 pages is a $5 processing fee. Real quick, I forgot to mention, so I talked about previously about the surname files. So some of the other file types that we do have as well, I forgot to put this back in the slide, where we do have county files, which those work kind of the same as the surname files, except they're specifically dealing with a county. And, you know, we might have certain folders where it'll be like Greene County churches, Greene County historic buildings, Greene, you know, Jefferson County schools, Jefferson County maps, you know, they break them down like that. And then there may be, you know, something of worth for your research in, you know, those kind of folders. And then there's the Kentucky subject files, which they are broken down literally into like subjects. So there may be a folder that deals with, you know, schools, you know, Kentucky schools, and it'll be any kind of articles or anything that we've gotten that are just generally about Kentucky schools that we might have in there. Or, you know, there may be a geology folder that talks about different geology related sites or subject matter dealing with Kentucky and geology. So, you know, you might find something in there as well. I don't use those two sections quite as much. So, and I don't see a lot of people use that when they do come in here, but I thought I would include that as well. I'm trying to think of what else. I think that's the only other things that I can think of off the top of my head as far as resources. Here's my contact information. Like I said previously, I'm the genealogy librarian here. And then this is my work email, daniel.ware@ky.gov. And my work phone number, my office phone number is 502-782-8098. And if anybody is interested, I can always forward this presentation to anybody that's interested. So, you know, just let me know. And I think that is about it. And I think I'm ready for questions and answer time. So thank you.
Do you do interlibrary loans for books and microfilm?
We do for books.
Okay.
Now I don't know about microfilm, but I do know, well, we did just recently get a new librarian back in November. Now she's the one that she heads up our interlibrary loan program. Her name is Julia Grannon. But I know she's been working with that as far as the interlibrary loans. But as far as I know, she's just done books. I don't know about any microfilm as of yet.
Okay, thank you. And another person is wondering, are there records there at the library before from before Kentucky became a state when it was part of Virginia?
Yes. Well, from what looking through the different records and materials that we have, because some of the, especially if it's like, you know, like Fayette County, a lot of the first counties of Kentucky, like even if it was records relating to, you know, before 1792, from what I can tell, they seem to still be included in the, like, you know, Fayette County, you know, section. Now I did just see a book actually this morning that was in the Virginia section, and it was I forgot what it was exactly, but it was related to Fayette County. And then like on the cover, it mentioned that, you know, it was like Fayette County, now part of Kentucky or something like that. So I think it just kind of depends. I say more so that if it's actually relating to a county that eventually became a Kentucky county, I believe it's just in the Kentucky county section with its respective county. But a lot of them, you know, are old enough that, yeah, we do have like stuff that goes back to like 1780s and, you know, and however early. So, you know, there is that capability to find that. Back to the individual who was asking about the group that's the Kentucky, it's the Kentucky African American Genealogy Group of Kentucky. So I would suggest you may be interested in contacting them as far as if it's Kentucky and African American related genealogy, because that's definitely that's what they do. They do have an email that you can email them. I don't know if they've got a phone number, but their email is aaggky@yahoo.com. And like I said, yeah, they're the African American Genealogy Group of Kentucky.
Okay, thank you. Another person is wondering if you have finding aids for the collections.
As far as I know in our digital collections here, I can actually what do you all see on my screen right now? Do you see the
I see the conclusion page for
okay,
the PowerPoint.
okay. Let me switch my sharing to a different. Okay, so now I think you should see the African American Genealogy Group of Kentucky page.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll show you kind of an idea of what you can find. Okay, so if you go to history.ky.gov, under our Explore tab here, there's a catalog and research tools, and that'll just literally take you to this page. Now, on our digital collections and certain items, especially if they are digitized, there are finding aids for that. And so, like, I can click here. And we also just have like a section that's just resources and finding aids. There's that, but also, like if you were looking up, let's see. Okay, so well, like here's a Ronald Morgan postcard collection, and this is a finding aid. So then you're going to get something kind of like this, but a lot of the documents that are digitized should have something similar to this. And you can just basically click on this little arrow, and then it'll basically kind of give you a description of what the collection consists of. But also, if you go down here, it'll usually break down. Sometimes it'll show like if there's multiple boxes or folders, it'll be like, folder 1 or box 1, folder 1, such and such. And also it'll give you like a description and kind of give you an idea of like, the date and things like that. Wish I'd picked a box one because that's the ones I usually do with more. Well, but hold on, let me see if I can. Okay, here we go. This is better. Okay, so like, yeah, so here we go. We've got our MSS collection. That's going to be usually in a box. And but usually it'll give you like a scope, or it'll tell you organization of the collection, related material, and then yeah, here we go. So like this is consisting of, it looks like quite a few boxes, at least, but it'll basically show you like box 1, folder 1, which is basically financial related material between 1780 and 1832. So yeah, if you're looking at, especially at the digitized items, you can usually find something similar to this that can help you with that.
Sounds good, thank you. Our next question, the person's asking, they say their great-grandmother was buried on their land in Callaway County with a rock as a marker. And this is oral history. And would there be any other records for her death? They think that she died in childbirth.
So like any alternatives to a death record?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, yeah, there could be I would say sometimes, like normally you could maybe check like a will, but in that case, I mean, I'm pretty sure they probably weren't planning to, since it was in childbirth, but sometimes I would say you might want to check if, I don't know, like a church record or even like sometimes depending on the location, there could be like cemetery records. Now in case of if they're like buried on their own land, it's kind of, that's a little trickier. But some people have gone through and like taken an inventory of different surrounding places and, the different counties and, what they see as far as, burials and things like that. I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, depending on the time period and location also, sometimes there may be like an obituary of some sort. But I mean, especially if it's too early enough, then that's probably not likely. Trying to think. Yeah, that one would probably be a little trickier. Just, I mean, especially if they died during childbirth.
Another person has an ancestor who they believe drowned in the Ohio River in the 1780s. And they're wondering if there are any materials that could help with that search.
Yeah, I mean, potentially. I know there are some, I mean, once again, potentially newspapers, because they might announce, especially if there was especially if it related to like, if it was like a flood or some kind of natural disaster. I know, certain like journals or publications might have written about it. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, I mean, I would say, I mean, because I know I've looked not too long ago for somebody who had something similar happen to an ancestor where they ended up in a river and drowned. And I mean, I scoured through newspaper articles from around the time, and this was like 1812, 1813. So, I mean, depending on the place, I mean, especially if it's coming from like a bigger city, bigger area, there might be potential. Cause like I was looking at like Lexington based newspapers. And so, I mean, some of the bigger newspapers might pick up something like that, especially from the time.
Let's see here. Another person's wondering, does KHS produce any Kentucky specific historical or genealogical publications?
Yes. Yeah, one of our big publications is Register of the Kentucky Historical Society. Basically, they've been published since 1903, and it's available in print and then electronically on a database called Project Muse. I believe this one, because I honestly haven't really gone into here, but I think this is one that you have to like either be like a member of, or you have to like pay something for, because it's not just a straightforward, like you can just look at it straight away. And of course, it's probably not going to load for some reason. Well, while that's loading, there's also, let's see. Yeah, there's also there's archived issues from 1903 up to the present with a 5-year moving wall available on JSTOR. Now that I know you do have to technically sign up for, but it's free. And then you can access the archived issues of that. We also have a full run table of contents, PDF, that kind of thing. There's also information. I would probably, okay, you can do a printed edition subscription that are $40 per year, it looks like. I would probably, we do have, there is a subscription information you can call or you can email. I would probably call either this number or email this number, and if you want more information about the register. There's also, let me see if I can find it. We also have digitized resource publications. Here we go. This is what I was actually looking for, but there's the Kentucky Ancestors. Now it's more actually on a online specifically now, but up until I think 2013, from 1965 to 2013, we had physical copies, which we do have 1965 up to 2013 here that you can look at. Now, unfortunately, there's not a master index, but you can kind of get there is a table of contents that you can look at if you click here, and everything's broken down by the different volumes and things like that. But yeah, those are the big two that I know of. I don't know of any other ones off the top of my head.
Sounds good. Thank you. So we are running a little short on time, so we'll do one more question. And this person asks, what is the best process for learning what high school my ancestor attended? My guess is that she lived either in Warren County or Christian County.
Okay. I mean, depending on the time period, because we do have some school censuses and, and some school records. So, depending on the time period, you might be able to look, in Warren County as far as, and see if there's anything specifically on any of the schools. I mean, I would say another good thing, because I have actually looked at one of these before to kind of pinpoint certain schools, because like I mentioned, in the counties area that we have, we do have like the histories of a particular county. Like a lot of the counties have some kind of history of book, at least. And a lot of times that will talk about the different like settlements and towns, and usually they'll mention like the schools and the churches that were built up in those particular areas. So I would look at stuff like that, especially because usually they'll record something and give you at least a time period of when that school, if it doesn't exist anymore, it may at least give you a timetable of when it started and when it ended, potentially.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I will just stick our email address in the chat. So if you have any questions or for a copy of the chat from today's program, please send us an email at genealogy@acpl.info. So thank you very much again, and have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.